Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco School Board Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 26, 2025 at 5 p.m. I'd like to make recognition that all members of the school board are present except for School Board Member Preble, who is running late and she is on her way. And we do have Superintendent Ray with us also this evening. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, everyone. Okay, next up, item 3 this evening, we do have the approval of the school board meeting minutes dated for February 12th, 2025. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated February 12th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Richards. Okay, are there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, item number 4 this evening, there are no adjustments to the agenda. Item 5, there are no correspondence. Item 6 is public session. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the school board. Okay, not seeing any members seeking recognition. Moving on to item number 7, that is the superintendent's report this evening, and that's Superintendent Ray.
Good afternoon, early evening, everyone. Several items to report tonight. First and foremost, you guys have your budget books in front of you. For those on the Finance Committee or those who wanted it, you got the really big version, and there's also a smaller version, and in the board document, everything is linked there, so if you want the PDF online, sometimes it's a little easier to search things that way. Today spent the day in Augusta testifying on several bills, but one of those bills was put forward by Representative Archer on increasing the weighted count for students who experience homelessness. We also talked about economically disadvantaged students and that weighted count. I think it's going to be a very interesting legislative session because money's a little tighter this time around. And so not only are you asking for additional subsidies, but I think you also have to think about ideas of where there could be savings as well and provide some solutions. So good day in Augusta. We had some students at Saco Middle School and C.K. Burns that showcased their spelling talents at the York County Spelling Bee. Olivia Blaze of Saco Middle School had an outstanding runner-up performance, so congratulations to all those students that participated. We're currently working towards upgrading our website to a new platform that will enhance how we communicate with families. One of the most significant improvements would be the integration of our website with social media platforms so that we can just like push things all out at one time, while also using a mobile app, giving parents more real-time information. So that's something that we're working on. We had our home opener for Saco Middle School Unified Basketball today. I did get some pictures on the ride home. It looks like we had an outstanding crowd there, so great work from those kiddos. C.K. Burns School received a $7,000 grant from the Special Olympics to support unified sports, so congratulations to C.K. Burns School. I want to say a thank you to the staff at Renewal by Anderson of Portland for their generous donation to support the Saco Middle School backpack program. We're so grateful for all of our community partners that step up during those pieces. Looks like tomorrow morning someone might get a phone call from me one way or the other, but I didn't realize that this sounds like weather's in our future again. But other than that, I am more excited about what I think I felt close to 45, 50 degrees walking in here this afternoon. So hopefully that's the track that we're on. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Ray? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on to item 8, that is the chair's report. School Board Chair Preble has not arrived yet, so we will move on to item number 9. There are no staff reports. Item 10 is the board subcommittee minutes. Item A is the Policy and Personnel Committee. Next meeting will be March 12th at 5:30 p.m. Item number 2 is the Finance and Infrastructure Committee agenda meeting. That next meeting is March 26th at 4:30 p.m. And item number 3 is the Curriculum Committee, and that next meeting is March 3rd at 4:30 p.m. There is no old business this evening. Item number 12, under new business, there are no new hires. Item B is resignations. Is there a motion for the first resignation, or for the retirement?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we accept the retirement of Lisa Ronco, SMS physical education teacher, effective at the end of the 24-25 school year.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Warnoff? Johnston, I'm sorry. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. And is there a second motion? School
No.
Board Member Truman?
I move we accept the resignation of Sarah Perry, speech language pathologist, effective March 14th, 2025.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Richards? Yep, second. Okay, any discussion on that item?
Quick question about, has that job been posted?
We have one up right now that has continued to be posted for a long time, and so we'll refresh that one.
Okay.
But just getting the resignation, once it's pushed, we'll post.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, item number C is a building update. Superintendent Ray?
Going to have Assistant Superintendent Parkhurst come up and talk about the building update.
Thank you. So a couple of exciting developments that we've been able to continue forward with. I believe it was the Tuesday before February break, we had a site walk with the planning board. It was quite a chilly morning, but a wonderful opportunity to walk through the woods and take a look at areas in which initial tree cutting is proposed so that the site can continue to be ready for a pre-April clearing of trees, which allows us to ensure that we don't disturb any potential non-confirmed bat populations that might be utilizing that site after April, though there is no concern of that. They just kind of leave that window open in May so that those populations are not disturbed. We've also spent a considerable amount of time, as Principal LeBlanc can attest to, in looking at kitchen design layout for our primary building. We have a priority to ensure that those students are served lunch in their classrooms, but with a building of that size, that creates different challenges. And so we've really tried to think backwards into how can we design and create a building that serves students well so that they're able to eat in small communal spaces and we don't have 4- and 5-year-olds that are eating with 100 or 200 other students in a cafeteria space. And how can we do that in a way that maintains the learning environment for all students, shortens delivery time for food, et cetera. So we've had probably a dozen iterations of design, and we continue to move closer with our kitchen design. Really a huge thank you to Sue Morell, our nutrition director, who's been involved in that project and really thinking about the measurement of trays and the size of bins and how trash gets moved after, et cetera. So all of those details in making sure that we design the building for what we want for students rather than doing it as we've always done it because that's the way that it's been done. And then lastly, we've had an opportunity to actually see some physical materials for siding and looking at colors and different things so that we can continue to move forward with the design, and looking forward to getting shovels in the ground, trees moving, I think will be a very exciting next step.
And I would say, from an exterior standpoint, been having some conversations with Dawn, just thinking about plowing, mowing, all of those types of pieces, because we wanted to start making some decisions about like what is going to be the best piece of equipment for us to have over there, what is going to be needed as we work with the city on snow removal, making sure that, because the middle school and this school is going to be in different locations, that there's the right piece of equipment, there's no overlap, and then also thinking about storage on site and those types of things. So I've been talking a lot with Dawn about those types of features. That's going to be a pretty big site, and when you think about the city and their involvement with all the snow removal, we just need to be on the same page to make sure we've talked through all of those issues.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Meg.
Thanks.
Okay, now moving on to item D is the 2025-2026 school calendar. You were provided in your packet with 2 versions. Is there a motion?
Are we just doing a first read today?
So this would be a first read.
Yeah.
I would have the same recommendation that I had last time to go with version 2, which does have the full 2 weeks off during the winter holiday. I just feel like it's a better usage of our time instructionally, and I think that it has some benefits for us from a building and capital improvement side, whether there's some projects being done or having the ability to turn down some heat, let 16 days during the winter and take the savings that way.
Okay, so you'd like to change this to a first reading?
Yes,
In the
it
motion.
takes 2 readings.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, so I could word it correctly.
Yep.
Madam Mayor, can I make that?
School Board Member Truman?
Yeah. I move we approve the first reading of version 2 of the 2025-26 school calendar.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
School Board Member Johnston? Any other discussion or comments?
We
School
had the, sorry, we met with the SEA yesterday with the calendar, and it seemed like this was predominantly their pick as well. So, and I think it matches along with the other schools in the region that we have to match up with those 5 days. So,
Okay, anyone else? School Board Member Gorch?
At the end, excuse me, at the end of the year, does 8th grade graduate before the 11th, and 8th graders don't have classes that week, or?
So typically what we try to do is have that as close to the next to the last day as possible. Last year is actually interesting, just based off the calendars and rain dates, trying to work with Thornton Academy about when the event would actually be, because they have a whole week of things that they have to consider. And so until the snow days kind of get flushed out, we don't set that date. And that is based off availability, what works on our schedules, when the last snow day comes up. But we try to make it the night before the last day of school, if possible.
So then Thornton, assuming snow days are normal, Thornton would graduate that Sunday, the 7th, right? And then the 8th graders would also go to Thornton the day of the graduation ceremony, or is that how that?
Well, they would go and do some practice, but again, depending on what Thornton's schedule is, what snow days are, when graduations are, that's there's no like set in stone date until we know all of those other factors.
Oh, yeah, just asking
Yep.
because, prior was like the day after, everyone's going back to school just one day, and this gets kids back through school 4 days into that week, so I just didn't know if that was maybe too much, but it sounds like the teachers are good with it. Might be good with it here, so.
Yeah, I think it's, again, when the holiday is on Thursday, it makes it the more difficult year to set that school calendar around the Christmas break, while also being mindful of Juneteenth and the 5 snow days and where that lands. And so we feel pretty good about these options.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. Roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff.
Yes.
School Board Member Preble. We are approving the first reading of the 2025-2026 calendar.
Okay. I'm going to vote yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, now takes us to item E, and that is the draft fiscal year 26 budget. Superintendent Ray?
I'm sorry about that. What I would ask you guys to do is to go to the budget memo, which I have a typo in the first line about the building referendum versus the regular referendum. But what I would like to draw your attention to throughout this budget process is that this, in some ways, is one of the more simpler budgets to explain the increases that I've had in several years. We know that school budgets are made up of 80% staff, tuition, another 10%, say, building and grounds and those things, and very little of it is actually the materials that you educate students with. And as we start this budget process and going through this, I want to highlight a few areas where all of our increases come from. And so as we start putting this budget together, we know that the most concerning piece, largest cost driver, is going to be health insurance. We have 10% in there. And what makes it a little bit difficult looking at our piece is that each year when you think about the cost of overall health insurance, you're dealing with employees that have health insurance changes. We had some changes in our contract that have changed some things on the health insurance piece. But when you look at about a percentage point, you're right in the area of about $40,000 per percentage point on health insurance. And so when you look at that number overall, year over year, you're looking at about a $400,000 increase. The second major driver in our budget is obvious the increased cost in MAT, which for the last couple of years has been higher than historical, at a little over 5%. But there's also another factor in that piece, that when you think about the possibility that the hotel is not in operation next year, there's a sum of students from grades 9 through 12 that could be backed off from tuition. We also have some new mandates around special education costs for students 18 through 22. And so there are some costs there that are in the budget for students who are required for us to provide services that may be until the age of 22. Utilities and all of the things that are associated with those costs tend to go up and down. You'll see some utility supplies and things like that are higher costs. Anytime you try to build something, it's a little bit more money than it has been in the past. Increasing benefits for staff, and knowing that we will be dealing with the paid family medical leave 1%. We spoke about it at a prior meeting about looking at a private insurer and working with the city, and we're getting some quotes on that piece, so we may be able to adjust that actually out of our budget for 13 or 14 months, and 1% of that cost would be somewhere in the $125,000 savings for us that we could reduce out of this. And then also just making sure that our salaries stay competitive. And that has been something we've tried to address through collective bargaining. When we look at our valuation, and we spent a lot of time talking about valuation, you'll see that in Saco, our city valuation went up about $344 million in 1 year. And that, we say that's such a huge number. That's actually less than the state average. And so that is why our subsidy actually came in better than we had, I kind of really thought it would. We received $1.6 million in additional state subsidy. At the same time, in order to receive that 1.6, you had to have a required local of $562,000 more. So they take your subsidy of what they think your total allocation is, multiply the mill rate times your valuation, and it says, in order to get this amount, you must raise this amount. Not a huge deal in Saco because we historically raise additional local that's much more than the required local. But in this situation, requiring another $500,000 to get 1.6 more does make a difference in the overall scheme of things. As we look ahead towards next year, we're going to see our valuation almost increase at about a 10.6% rate. When you look at that comparative to the rest of the state, we're actually going to be quite a bit less than the rest of the state on valuation increase. That number on the state level is going to be more like 13.5%, which is going to be fairly good news for us, hopefully, as we come in next year if GPA is not cut back. I do think that what we're going to see is Southern Maine had their largest valuation rise, also have municipalities and staff that can keep up with the adjustment in valuation, versus your smaller communities that it takes a little bit of a lag time, and now you're seeing those rising rates anywhere coastal catching up. When we look at the overall increase to our budget, there's really 6 areas that equal about $4.3 million in the grand scheme. Now, obviously, throughout the budget, there's ups and downs in little places. But the 6 areas are 9 through 12 tuition at 1.285 is what we would budget for, that piece. Salaries and positions within the district of $1.359 million. Also be aware that we have 1.5 EL teachers and 3 EL ed techs as part of that. Maybe not so many of those needed, depending on what happens at the hotel. Health insurance is $236, but it's only $236 because our number went down from some of the retirements and things happened in the years, but it's about 40,000% if we were to be under 10% of an increase that we would take off. Benefits is $129,000. School construction. School construction bond increase of $1.1 million. However, you're going to get that money in state subsidy once we sell the bond, and I have that highlighted in the offsetting revenue coming in on the cover sheet. So when you think about like true increases in expenses in your budget, you're really at more like 3.2 million of an increase because you have that state subsidy coming in a revenue offset on that. And then you have special education for 8 through 12. We have about $250,000 of an additional increase there based on some students who reside in Saco. When we look at enrollments for next year, I've done two projections for you. The first chart of projections would be our current staffing levels based off the current number of students that we have, and you can see in all grade levels what those ratios would be. And then also did another chart with no hotel students and what those ratios could be, so that you could see that the impact there if students were not in our system because of the closing of that project. I think that while our ratios are a little bit higher than I like, especially at Burns School, we do have a crunch of space there. And so that's something that we have to discuss, because we don't necessarily have other classrooms that we could use without making a decision to bring in a portable or have educators teaching off a cart. We're pretty tight in that space, and so that's a challenge for us. When we look at considerations, as I said, 1.5 EL teachers is in the budget, 3 ed techs for EL. I kept the additional teacher in the budget currently that we added at the end of the year for Young School. Meg is doing an examination of some of the software programs that we use throughout the school district, and whether the value of those and the amount of usage time and whether it really matches what we want our students doing during the school day is something that we're talking about. We'll continue to examine and compare staffing ratios for special education and all of our related services. Continue to think about capital improvements at SMS. I still have $450,000 in the budget, like we've done for the last several years, to try to bring that building as close as we can up to speed before we move into a new building. We need to examine our fund balance, which we are pretty healthy on the fund balance side of things. Continued increase of out-of-district costs and alternate programming. That's something that we have to, have discussions about and look at through this process. Explore energy and fuel costs. Obviously, I think that's a little bit unpredictable right now. We have some very much locked in. Look at equitable staffing assignments based off student ratios. Continued refinement of budget and the cost. That's not like you just hand this over and say that's it. We want to continue to still work on, can we find a better deal on this, or is there collective buying, or all of those pieces that happen. And then examine staffing needs as we transition to the new buildings. We're really trying to keep a focus on that so that when we're ready to move into the new buildings, we're not having a situation where there's a whole lot of either staff added or displaced based off that move. We want to be thoughtful about what it looks like moving into that building. When I bring you to the revenue sheet on the side of things, I just want to kind of talk on a full overview side. When you look at the expense to expense, you're looking at an 8.25% increase, realizing that 1.1 million of that is capital construction. So obviously you're looking at about a quarter of that. So you took that piece out, you're now in the 6% range of expenditure to expenditure. And then when we look at the revenue side of things, we're still waiting for a finalized number on adult education, but that's in the grand scheme of things, that's not going to be more than $20,000 or $30,000 one way or the other on that. And when you look at the revenue side of the coin, of what this increase would be to taxpayers from where we are today, it's at about $1.1 million or 5%. And so while I think we have some work to do, this is not the worst picture in the world during where we're starting out. there are some adjustments that hopefully will be able to be made through the process, some questions that we might need to think about, some efficiencies that we have, and then having that conversation, obviously, with our city council and the elected boards that go through this process and saying, okay, where do we feel our community needs to be right now? But I think that at least today, we're starting at a very reasonable point. What needs to happen next is I need to get with the finance committee and select some dates that we can do a review with principals and talk about those things, continue to refine anything in our office. Still will be some budget things that could come in higher or a little bit lower, but we'll try to neutralize them the best that we can. We know that we'll have joint meetings with the city council coming up. We have a presentation on the 17th of March 17th, which is a Monday night, where we'll present the budget to the city council. At the next school committee, you'll get more of an in-depth look of this budget through a presentation. And then after meeting with the city council, being able to have some of those hard discussions about where do we think we need to be, what do we need to do to make adjustments, get final health insurance numbers so that we can have a voted upon approved budget, hopefully before April vacation, and that sets them up for the right timeline for them to go through the first and second reading and narrow in. I do not expect any changes to come out of Augusta where there is additional subsidy coming our way. I think it's pretty locked in. My only concern would be going the other way through the funding piece, but I think that's pretty stable right now of we have what we have. So I'm happy to take any questions on this kind of first overview as you're handed your budget books tonight.
Any questions or comments for Superintendent Ray?
Come on, Kevin.
School Board Member Roach?
Seriously, we gotta have something here.
I was biding my time, you know. Gotta pick my spots, you know, quote Run DMC, it's tricky, all right? It's tricky. Anyway, welcome back, Jen. Hey, main care revenue. You've been optimistic in prior meetings, but yet the budget is still at 400,000. Now, gotta be careful with Augusta, of course, and the state, but is there a way, I mean, if you increase that estimate, and if it is truly reality for this year, you know, that is money not coming out of the local tax base. So what are your thoughts about increasing that? Again, if real. This is the opposite discussion, by the way, of like 5 years ago. So
Yeah. So, I mean, the staff has done a great job billing for current pieces. However, I look around us and I read the news, or the news gets pushed on us, and I think that thinking about main care, which gets its money from federal Medicaid pieces, I think that's a little up in the air. And that's part of the reason that I've kept that number low, is because we do have a good fund balance. So if that, let's just say that totally evaporates for some way, shape, or form, I know that we have enough in reserve and other fund balance where we could fill that hole for 1 year. So those are a couple of the places where certainly as a board, you would have the ability, then we can talk through that piece of whether we want to increase some revenue taking from our reserves accounts or anticipating that coming in. I would say that, like, right now, what I'm trying to display to you is theoretically worst-case scenario and most conservative, and then we can have those discussions throughout of what makes sense. I think when we look at everything that's going on with the possibility of the Department of Education and some of those other pieces, time will be our best guide of what's going to happen. My concern would not only be from main care, but if something happened to our title funding and there was another $400,000, or our if we looked at local entitlement, and there's another $700,000, there's some federal funding play that we would have to be really concerned about, that we would have no choice but to hit local taxpayers on some of those costs.
So speaking of that, was the next question. Federal funds, which revenue buckets do they flow through here? Through the state, right? So can the state, they've given us a number of their allocation. Could they change their mind because we lost our federal title funds for the state?
So you could, yes.
Okay.
Luckily, those federal funds aren't in that picture, so it allows us to handle all of those things separately. You know, if federal funding totally stopped, we'd be here at a committee meeting saying, okay, we have all of these positions that are paid for by federal funds.
Right.
What is the approach that we're going to take?
It's a little confusing in that the positions that are reimbursed by federal funds we don't show it in the budget.
Correct.
As an expense. So, yeah, initially it would be like, wow, we gotta cut it because we didn't authorize that through the taxpayers, so.
Correct. And that's where, you know, fund balance could come in and some of those other pieces. I do suspect that over the next several weeks around the debt ceiling limit in Washington and some of those budget priorities that need to move forward, some clarity is gonna come here in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And without those funds, we're probably gonna be having a very, very different conversation.
So it's status quo for now on that, and no increase to main care for now. You know, again, increasing that could bring the 5% increase down, you know, in the 4s or something, whether that perception is good for city council or for the taxpayers, I'm not sure. But I did see that you did not budget to keep the tax increase lower. You didn't budget anything for contingency. So, but that is because fund balances are strong, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So I have no contingency in there, because we have a fund balance that's, I believe it's in the $2 million range at this point, waiting for our audited financials to come back, both city and school. If there's an emergency, that's there for us in that situation. Never been a huge fan of putting contingency in. And it's only been done in the past years during negotiations times to think about a placeholder for that money. I think probably we're in the, again, tonight probably is trying to paint conservative on revenue, high on expense, and see where we start to come together.
Still got time for questions?
Keep them going.
So the problems we've been having about trying to fill, in all districts, having to fill, you know, behavioral specialists, speech therapists, special education positions. In the budget, I might have suggested this before, but is in there, should we just try, not just to increase salary for attraction, but can we, because of turnover in those departments, should we just make an effort to budget an extra position just to have it in there? So if you hire, say, 2, that maybe you normally do 1, if that turns over, at least the schools have some coverage of,
Yeah,
not just to keep an extra person around just for a rainy day. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, you know, if we're going to be conservative on our expenses, this has been an issue that's been a headache for us.
Yeah, and I would say that based off the size of our budget alone, I don't worry about something like that. Based on my experience of hiring, of just knowing that there's retirements, and then sometimes different people come into the positions based off different scales, people leave, especially in a special ed setting, it seems like have never been fully staffed for even one day. And so, as that kind of that revolving situation of hiring, you'd be surprised how much, if Karen was leaving her position and she gives me a 2 weeks notice, the ability of staff to have someone there by posting dates, all of those things to fill the 2 weeks time, there's at least a week, week and a half, 2 weeks, where someone in that certain position many times is not getting paid. And it's not just the salary, it's the benefits, it's the health insurance. So over the course of the year, that does tend to build up. So I don't think that from that standpoint, you necessarily need to plan for an overstaffing.
Okay. Just quick down the row of schools here. I assume Young getting a much bigger percent of dollars if citizens are looking at that. It's not because you live closer to Young and you like Jeff better or something, but it's because of student counts. And is it also do with any additions to Young? Any modulars, anything?
Well, again, no, there's no additions there, but when you look at Young getting more, I mean, yeah, it's true. We just appreciate Jeff a little bit more than Wendy. No. And I'm a little closer to that. A lot of that, Kevin, just comes with, you take one extra teacher, and you take one thing that can sway a budget in one way or the other is just Wendy hires an individual that has the insurance buyout, and Jeff happens to hire an individual that has full family. There's a big difference. Health insurance, there's a big difference in that. So sometimes there's just some movement that goes in that. There's also times where people just change the way that they structured on the salary lane change or get a degree, it adds up in those places. What actually one of the things that makes it a little bit tough on Meg and the title funding piece of it is that because of the title funds, we're supposed to spend a little bit more money at Fairfield School, but I know that we've tried to work to be Hold School to smoothen some of that. It's just places in the budget where there happens to be, and it could be a programmatical increase because we do have some special education programs that are housed on one side versus the other side of the city that makes some difference. You also certainly, if you look at Young School, when we put the EL positions in there, there is a much more of a focus at Young School because many of those students are attending there. So when you look at those EL positions, you're also going to be looking at a Young School increase.
And similarly, Burns, their increase is double middle school. So is that, again, mostly based on student count, classroom?
Student count, classroom counts, some of the things that they need, and again, where people fall on the scale, and thinking back to last year's possible retirements, where they came from in last year's budget and what category they were in, also would possibly decrease that salary line so that the increase is not as much the next year. I suspect that in another year, when you're here, based off where we look at retirements, you might see a different picture based off just that number alone.
All right, all the questions, I'll wait until I cuddle up with this nice little book here.
Save it for council.
And council too. We got a big party on St. Patrick's Day for that. It's gonna be good. But the last question on TA, their 9.25% increase, 6% comes from the state Maxwell Lowell tuition, no change in IVF, and then the final 3% or so has to do with our assumptions that we budgeted 30 more students this year. Did you do anything with the buffer of that, or was that just 30 more kids we're estimating next year versus last year's budget?
So I haven't included any buffer on top of what we currently have because of the fact that we anticipate the closing of the hotel that would allow that buffer to then come into play.
Oh, actually, I lied. I have a question on that too. So on the hotel kids, you were just in Augusta today. Any update about trying to settle that decision about the hotels from September 30th to before the school year or end of the calendar year? Or
I have not. I know that what we are being told is that as we transition this spring, there would not be new families placed into the hotel, was what their hope or their goal was. Haven't heard anything new on that piece, but I'll give Maine Housing a call this week and talk to Greg to see if he can give me an update.
don't hurt me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. Superintendent Ray, were items F and G covered under that full completion? Okay. So item F, draft cover sheet, and item G, fiscal year 26 increased cost memo, were included with item E. Okay, item 13 is other information. I would just like to throw out tonight, as we're talking about budgets, with regard to the June ballot, I've been notified that there will be a referendum question, a question that is presented every 3 years, and that is asking residents if they still want to vote on the school budget by referendum. And this is a mandatory every 3-year referendum question that comes due. So that will be included on the June budget ballot. Okay, item 14 is executive session. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we enter into executive session for the discussion of legal rights and duties of the school unit pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056E.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to enter executive session at 5:48 passes 7-0, and we will be downstairs in the conference room. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
Do I have to say anything special, or can I say so moved?
So moved.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, there has been motion to exit executive session made by School Board Member Preble. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Everybody wants it today. I'll let someone else have one.
What's that? School Board Member Roach? Did you get that for who? Okay. School Board Member Richards, you guys are sounding a lot like tonight. Okay, roll call vote.
I
School
just,
Board Member Warnoff.
I've never done it before, so I wanted to say it. Yes.
School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion to exit executive session passes 7-0.
6:33.
There is no report out of executive session. Next item is motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by School Board Member Truman,
Second.
second by School Board Member Johnston. Roll call.
Warnoff.
Warnoff.
She usually does. That's why I was like, look
I
at
don't know
that.
if it's me or the speaker tonight. I
We're trying to throw
apologize.
everything out. We're trying to throw our voices around.
Jody, I'm right next to you, I agree that voice sounded like it was coming over here.
It does.
All right, yeah.
All right, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff.
Yes.
School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes 7-0 at 6:34. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.